Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to another Season 7 League of Legends Champion Guide. Today, we're going to cover Nami.
I decide what the tide will bring.
If you'd like to find more of my content, you guys can visit my website, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. All of those will be down in the video description. I also have a new Discord, so if you'd like to hop in and chat or just ask anything League of Legends related, please feel free to stop by. I do also have a Patreon, so that and everything else, plus the timestamps for this guide will also be down in the video description. But now let's kick off Nami with her pros and cons. So Nami's a champion with some very solid crowd control abilities which give her great peeling. Her ebb and flow ability gives her some really solid sustain and can also be used to poke the enemy champions. Then finally, she has a great engage and disengage from her ultimate, which can really change the tide of a team fight. Now although Nami does only have 2 skill shot abilities, she is fairly skill shot reliant. Your ultimate and your Q have to be hitting the enemy champions in order for her to have a pretty decent game. She's also a pretty damn squishy champion, so positioning is key, and you are also mana hungry, so you can't spam your heals all lane long. For Nami's Masteries, we have 2 different options, and first of course is Windspeaker's Blessing. This makes your heals heal for 10% more and even grant armor and magic resist. It's great for sustaining throughout the game, and it's definitely the most common pick on Nami. If we want to be a bit more aggressive, we can stick with 18 Cunning, but instead of Windspeaker's Blessing, go for Thunderlord's Decree. I usually just stick with Windspeakers myself, but if I know I'm in a really easy lane and I do want more kill pressure, I will go for Thunderlord's Decree and then usually take Ignite as well. For my runes, I like to go for Magic Penetration Reds, Armor Yellows, Magic Resist Blues, and Ability Power Quints. This is definitely the most generic rune page you'll see on any AP support champion out there, and it's definitely my favorite. If we instead want to be a bit more defensive, we could go for Armor Reds instead, and then take the Armor Yellows and turn those into Health Yellows. We of course won't do as much damage since we're lacking that magic penetration, but we will be tankier. For your first summoner spell, you'll want to take Flash. You're a pretty damn squishy support champion and it can save your life in all sorts of different situations. You can then even use it offensively to land your Aqua Prison for an easy kill if you are too far away from the enemy champion. Now Exhaust is a great pick for your second summoner spell. It's really strong in the mid and late game when you can use it to stop high damage champions when they get onto your squishy carries. Ignite, however, is another good option if you're wanting to add some kill pressure in the lane, or if you're just against healing abusing champions like Soraka or Mundo. Usually I'll pair Windspeaker's Blessing with Exhaust, and Thunderlord's Decree with Ignite. Now let's kick off your abilities by looking at our passive, Surging Tides. All allied champions touched by any of Nami's abilities gain 60 plus 20% AP bonus movement speed for 1.5 seconds, doubled when touched by Tidal Wave. So this passive is actually pretty fantastic and it works great with your W and E, but I like it with the E especially because you do slow the enemy as well when you do auto attack. If your AD carry is trying to chase the enemy, pop your E on them so they will get some speed and they can slow the enemy champion as well. So of course the Tidal Wave gives you some really strong chasing potential. If the enemy champions are running away from you and you do have some teammates in front of you, shoot your Tidal Wave through them so they get a ton of bonus movement speed and can easily catch up to them. Now let's move on to that Q ability, Aqua Prison. Nami sends a bubble towards the target area, dealing magic damage to all enemies hit, revealing them, and suspending them for 1.5 seconds. So this ability here is fantastic for engaging or peeling. If you're going in for a gank or team fight and you see somebody within range, if you can land your Aqua Prison on them, they will pop into the air for 1.5 seconds, and it should be a rather easy kill. Then of course, if somebody gets onto one of your allied champions, you can use this to peel for them. Land this on the enemy so your teammate will have a really easy time kiting away. Now let's move on to our W ability, Ebb and Flow. Nami unleashes a stream of water onto the target champion or herself, which then bounces to nearby unaffected champions up to twice, alternating between enemies, allies, and herself. Ebb and Flow heals allies and deals magic damage to enemies, with each bounce being 85% as effective as the previous one. So this ability of course can be used offensively and defensively, and usually I like to use it very offensively and try to poke the enemy champions as much as I can early in the lane phase. Of course, if you're in a very hard matchup and you're getting poked over and over again, then you're going to be using it more defensively. Of course, you want to try to bounce it as well, so you can accomplish both at the same time. Now your last basic ability, your E, Tidecaller's Blessing. Nami blesses the target allied champion or herself for 6 seconds, causing her target's next 3 basic attacks to each deal bonus magic damage and slow their target for 1 second. So this is a great little buff ability, and it does add some nice damage. It's really nice when you use it on your AD carry because they will get bonus movement speed and their next 3 attacks will slow, which will make kiting or sticking onto the enemy champion a lot easier. Now, time for your ultimate, Tidal Wave. Nami summons a tidal wave that surges forth, dealing magic damage to all units it hits, briefly knocking them up and slowing them for between 2 and 4, based on distance traveled, seconds. So, it's a fantastic ability which is great for engaging and disengaging. Keep in mind with your passive, this ability does add a lot of movement speed to anybody it does go through, which makes it great for engaging onto the enemy team. Of course, that knock up and slow when it does hit the enemies makes it even better. Of course then, when you and your team are trying to escape and the enemy's chasing you, you can shoot this behind you, knock them up and slow them so they can no longer catch you. For our skill order, we'll want to put a point into our ultimate whenever we can, at 6, 11, and 16. Then for its sustain and poke in that lane phase, we max our W. We then have the choice of maxing either our E or our Q second. I almost always like to max my E second because the slow does scale, but if you do want a lower cooldown on your Q and be able to knock up people more often, then that is when you'd want to max second instead. I, however, like to take one early point in it at level 3 and then max it last. Now, warding is one of the most important things on a support champion, and if we're pretending we're Zyra here, here's the first ward location we may want to consider. As you can see here, circled in red is Karma, and of course she's just sitting in there shooting out spells over and over again, so we place a ward there so we can see those spells and have a much easier time dodging. This is even more important against champions that can grab you, like Blitzcrank. So what do we do to protect ourselves from the jungler? Of course, just to the right side of this picture would be the bottom lane. Unless the enemy jungler is something that can take a crazy ganking path like a Nocturne or a Zac, or just somebody that can run down lane like an Evelynn, then these two routes marked in red would be the main ways we could get ganked. In the left side bush there is the tri-bush, and that will protect us from enemies coming through our jungle. On the top right side there is of course that river ward, which will protect us from the river. In the later stages of the game, however, warding gets a little bit more complicated. The two most important wards, of course, are the ones circled in red, which would be the Dragon and the Baron ward. These areas you want to try to have warded as much as possible so the enemy can't sneak either of these objectives. You of course have the option of placing a ward deeper in the pit as well, if you're not safe to go to that location. Now let's look at a few AD carry synergies, and first up we have Corki. If you can land your Aqua Prison, Corki can follow up with a ton of burst damage from his Phosphorus Bomb and his Gatling Gun, which forms a pretty potent lane combo. Once Corki acquires his Trinity Force, your combo will be really hard to deal with. You'll then be able to use your Tidecaller's Blessing on Corki so he can slow and keep the enemy easily in his Gatling Gun. Now Twitch is a fairly immobile champion and you can help him out a ton with the peel from your Aqua Prison and your Tidal Wave. If you then land an offensive Aqua Prison, Twitch can drop his Venom Cask on top of them to slow them after. Once the enemy has 5 stacks of Deadly Venom, he can then burst them with his Contaminate. Now let's look at 2 more synergies, and first up is Jhin. Now Jhin works great with Nami because they can easily crowd control together as long as Nami is hitting the enemies with Ebb and Flow and Jhin can land his Deadly Flourish. You can then combo your Aqua Prison on top, which will surely be enough time to kill the enemy. Keep in mind though that Jhin is rather immobile, so peel for him when it's needed. Now with Vayne, your Tidecaller's Blessing lasts for 3 auto attacks, which synergizes very well with her Silver Bolts since it also needs 3 auto attacks. These two skills in combination will give you some very effective short trades. If you can then land your Aqua Prison on somebody near a wall, she will have enough time to easily chain CC them with her Condemn. Finally, make sure you give her the protection she needs in lane, she's not the strongest early game champion. In teamfights, you'll primarily want to use your abilities to peel for your carries. Use your Aqua Prison to peel an assassin off of your AD carry if there is one, unless you're able to use it to pick off a squishy enemy. You can use your Tidecaller's Blessing on either yourself to slow enemies, or use it on your AD carry so they can kite easier and do a bit more damage. You'll then want to use your Tidal Wave as either a way to engage or disengage. If you're trying to run away from the enemy team, drop it behind you to knock up the enemy, and it's also great to catch an enemy team running away, since you can knock them up and slow them, but also gain speed at the same time. Now Nami is a really strong support pick, but there are a couple that can all-in her, and they're Blitzcrank and Scion. Blitzcrank can be a very hard matchup because if he lands one single rocket grab, he'll be able to kill you when he adds his Power Fist, Static Field, and his AD carries damage of course. Make sure you're staying behind minions and make sure you ward the side bushes if he is using them. Finally, if your AD carry does unfortunately get grabbed, make sure you use your Aqua Prison to help your AD carry get out. If possible, use it on his AD carry, but if you have to, use it on him. Then there is support Scion, and he's a very underrated support pick, and he can give Nami a lot of issues. His Roar of the Slayer will slow you and reduce your armor, and when he uses his unstoppable onslaught and knockup from Decimating Smash, he and his AD carry can easily all-in you if you don't show them some respect. Make sure you play very passively and pick your spots to trade effectively. Alright, now let's finish this guide with our item build, and you'll want to start with either a Spell Thief's Edge or a coin. Now I'm a much bigger fan of going for the Spell Thieves, but if I really need that lane sustain, I will take the coin. Either way, we'll pick whatever gold generation item we want, and then get a redemption and a locket. Here I'm showing either Eye of the Watchers or the Talisman, but you could take the Frost Queen's Claim or the Eye of the Oasis. Now for our boot options, we have the Boots of Mobility, Ionian Boots, or Boots of Swiftness. I'm definitely a way bigger fan of getting the Boots of Mobility since I do roam around a lot, but Ionians are great if you do need 10% CDR, and Boots of Swiftness are great for all-around mobility. For our item pool, first highlighted in yellow here is our Sightstone, and this is something you must grab if you didn't get one of the Eye items. That's of course if you go for either the Talisman or the Frost Queen's Claim. Next here we do have the Ardent Censer, which is a really great way to increase your healing even more, a very solid item on Nami, and pretty much always one I get. Mikhail's is then a very strong item as well if there is a lot of CC on the enemy team, and you want to be able to break one of your allies out of it. Zeke's is a pretty strong item as well since you can attach yourself to your AD carry, but it's not one I take too much in solo queue because usually you don't have the greatest synergy. If the enemy team really relies on their auto attacks, then you could get a Frozen Heart as well to reduce their attack speed. Then if you do need some extra split push or the enemy team has a ZZ Rot portal themselves, you could get one yourself as well to counter theirs. Then finally, of course Athene's is an item that works great on Nami as well, considering you do have a heal and all. For my main full build though, which is the Eye of the Watchers, I'll take that core, get the Boots of Mobility, then of course that Ardent Censer since it is really strong on Nami, and usually a ZZ Rot portal. For our second full build, we go for a Talisman instead. We had to grab that Ruby Sightstone, then we take the rest of our core, and finish it off with an Ardent Censer. You won't have room for a ZZ Rot portal or another random item, but you will have the Activate from the Talisman. Of course, you can substitute Eye of the Oasis for Eye of the Watchers, or Frost Queen's Claim for the Talisman. But that covers everything I've got for Season 7 Support Nami. Please make sure you guys check out the video description for a link to all of my social medias, and feel free to hop in Discord if you have any questions at all. I also do Riot Point giveaways on my Twitter, so that's one link you should definitely check out. But other than that, thank you guys a ton for checking out this champion guide, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.